I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. I'm the host of the Sports Psychology Hour, which is a radio show airing every Sunday morning from 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time in Kansas City on 810WHB.com. You can listen to the show live from 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, and our shows are podcasted everywhere. I've launched the Sports Psychology Show now as a podcast, and so go to my website, winnersunlimited.com. Click on the podcast tab, and you can hear episodes of the show. We've got close to 10 years of podcasts on there. I'm in my 34th year on the radio here in Kansas City. So podcasts didn't exist when we started, but they're on there now. I'm doing a new series of conversations now focusing on coaches and athletes. And today, we're privileged to have Kate Sawina on. Kate is a gymnast, a coach, very athletic young woman, and I'm glad she's with us this morning, or this evening, to talk about her career and a little about coaching and athletes. So, Kate, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you coached, or you coached. You competed. You're coaching now, but you competed on 2 national championship teams at the University of Delaware. You've been involved in cheerleading since you were 3. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow. Tell me about getting started at 3.
Well, my siblings cheered when I was younger. They actually started one of the cheer gyms in my area. They were on like the first team to start that gym. And then my oldest sister is 10 years older than me. So when I was born, I was kind of just thrown into it when I could start walking. So
it's like my sister's doing it, so I'm doing it too.
Yeah, and my mom was very involved in it, and she was the team mom of all of the teams. So I was just thrown into it with my siblings, and it just grew
Took
from
off
there.
from there. Well, okay, so what did you like about cheer? Because it's a lot of people don't realize it's really demanding. Your practices are hard, and you've got to do all these stunts, and you've got to be in all these positions and things. It's like being a gymnast on steroids sometimes because of all the things you have to do.
Yeah, I like the challenge of it. There's always room to grow and get better, but you're always with people. So it's not a sport that you're doing alone. You always have that team, but you're never but you never have to, how do I say it? It's on yourself to grow. So like you alone have to be the one to be like, oh, I want to get to the next level. I want to be on the higher level teams. I want to push myself. I want to get better and put in the extra work to do that. And just being in the gym and working hard, and I always loved doing that and always wanted to be better than what I was and what I was doing at that moment. I always wanted to strive to be the best I could be in the sport.
So at age 3, when you started, I don't know if you can remember too many specifics from back then, but what was that like at age 3? I mean, that just had to be something fun to be doing, I guess.
Yeah, it was more just like being with your friends and in a uniform and doing the cute little routines that the 3-year-olds do now. And that's what I really remember, was just being with my friends at that time.
And did you do other sports as you got older, or did you just stick with cheer all the time?
I played soccer and I cheered. But I remember when I played soccer in I want to say elementary school, I was just doing somersaults. So my parents were like, okay, this isn't for her. But then when I went to middle school and high school, I played soccer.
So you're doing somersaults on the soccer field in grade
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a good way to score a goal, flip over and kick it. That would have I would have made ESPN's top 10,
Yeah.
Okay, so you stuck with it, and then you went on to college and competed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the growth process and the pressures and demands. I've worked with so many athletes. I'm in my 44th year of work as a sports psychologist, one of the first trained people in the country to do this. And throughout my career, I've had athletes and parents and coaches come into my office at all ages. I mean, starting at Youngest person I've ever seen was age 8, who was a gymnast, came in with several pages of goals. And the oldest person I ever saw was an 81-year-old female golfer. When I asked her why she needed to see me, and this is a direct quote, she said, "Quite frankly, Dr. Jacobs, my putting sucks." So I've worked with a wide range of people. So where, in the area of cheer, where did the pressure and stress come on to you? When did you start to notice that? Because at some point, I'm sure that had to have been there about succeeding and doing well.
I would say probably like junior year of college. Like sophomore, junior year of college is when it hit me. Because
Tell us about that.
Well, how I started cheering in college is actually interesting because I got injured in All-Star cheer, and that's why I stopped doing All-Star. And then I kind of was just like, I guess I'll try out for the team for college. So I tried out, and then I made it, and I did really well my first year. I was one of the best flyers on the team my freshman year, and I just kind of had the most amazing freshman year in my cheerleading career as a freshman you could have. And then sophomore year, things kind of changed. They put me on a different team than I wanted to be. Weight gain is a very
Not looked upon very favorably.
Right. Your weight is something that's very not talked about, but it's something that's watched in cheerleading. And it's something that I stopped caring about as much going into sophomore and junior year because I was more focused on other things than sport, like cheering. But I still cared deeply about my skill set and what I was doing in cheer. But then I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
So your weight became an issue, if I'm hearing you correctly.
In my head, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that up because for so many female athletes, the issue of their weight is a topic that is oftentimes looked upon in a negative way, oftentimes not really talked about, but is emphasized. So how did you deal with that?
I mean, and when I say my weight gain, it was probably like 5 pounds. Like it wasn't
Right.
crazy.
It wasn't like you gained 25 pounds, but still,
yeah.
I've worked with so many female athletes where gaining 1 pound it's a problem for them.
Right. I kind of just ignored it and just pretended that it wasn't happening. Like I never have been the type of person that puts a lot of pressure on my weight. Because even growing up in the all-star world, I was always told I was too big, even when I was like 100 pounds and had abs. You're told that you're not skinny enough. So I never listened to that. So it didn't bother me, but looking back now, I can tell that it did affect me.
So let me interrupt you. How did that affect your self-confidence? Because that's such a, I talk about, Kate, preparation, focus, attitude and confidence as the keys to success. And confidence is the foundation of all of it. So for your self-confidence, your self-worth, self-value, what happened to it? How'd you handle that?
It definitely went down a bit. I definitely looked at my teammates as being better than me and skinnier than me and being able to do more things than I could. And not only because of my weight or how I looked, but just because I didn't feel comfortable in who I was because I wasn't what I was freshman year.
How did the coaches deal with you on that?
Well, there was a lot of changes. I wasn't on the team I wanted to be on, so that affected it as well. I was bounced around a lot on teams between sophomore and junior year. And I was kind of the person of, well, we need you on this team and we need you on that team. So you're going to go here and there. So then instead of me just like rising to the occasion, I kind of just was like, well, if I don't do well here, then maybe they'll put me where I want. So that's kind of how I dealt with it. Of
Okay.
like,
Interesting.
maybe if I don't try as hard like I should be, maybe they'll just put me where I want to go. And then that obviously never happens and it never works out that way. But
so how would you evaluate your self-confidence at that point? How would you describe it? Where was it at?
it was not great. It was probably at like a 7 out of 10.
Out of 10. Okay. Well, still that 7's pretty good, but I'm sure there've been times it's been 9 to 10.
Yeah.
And maybe times when it was lower than that too, but it sounds like you're a pretty confident young woman. So when you noticed your confidence was lower, it wasn't where you wanted it to be, what did you do to bring it back up? How did you get it to be stronger?
I tried talking to my teammates and my coaches and tried focusing on skills that I could improve on and how to improve. And
Rather than focusing on the negative side of things.
Yeah. On what can I do to get me to where I want to be, instead of focusing on, well, they're not doing it correctly. They're not doing it how I like. Well, what can I do to make it better for myself? Is how I kind of approached it.
You're bringing up a topic here about body image. And for female athletes, that's a very sensitive topic to get into with a lot of people, but at the same time, it's a very important one.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that fit in? Now you're coaching now, right? What level?
High school.
Okay. So because of your experience and your background, competing not only in high school at the collegiate level and winning national championships, I'm sure this is an issue some girls have that you coach. Am I correct?
Yes.
So how do you deal with that with them? How do you get them? Because body image, self-esteem, self-confidence, confidence all fits together into a package.
Mm-hmm.
And when one of those aspects, especially for female athletes, is not strong, it can really affect everything else.
Yeah. I want them, because there's a lot of terms in cheerleading in which I know can be there's a lot of terms that can be misunderstood as where they might think you're talking about their weight. So like if you're in the air and you're like, you say, do I feel light, or you feel heavy, that's not necessarily talking about their weight. It means how are they holding their body weight themselves
On that particular stunt, whatever it might be.
right. So when I talk to my athletes, I make it very clear to them that I'm not talking about your weight. I'm talking about how you're holding yourself in the air, because I don't want to give them the negative body image or give them a complex of I'm calling them fat or I'm giving them negative words towards their body or for them to think about, because I don't want to be that coach in which I had or when I was younger or that I've seen other people experience. I'm really conscious of how I say things and how I speak to them and the words I use so that they don't internalize it and think, oh, well, she thinks I'm fat, or they think I'm heavy, which means I'm fat, which means I need to lose weight.
Well, I admire you for being that sensitive to it and not aware of it. And obviously from your background, that's good. Have you had some young women that you've worked with who have issues with this that they struggle with?
Not that they've come to me and said it, but I can tell. Like I can notice it.
Okay, let me interrupt you right there. Since because this is an important fact, you can notice it as their coach. So how do you go about bringing that up? How do you bring it up? That's such a sensitive, for female athletes, talking about their weight and their body image is perhaps the most sensitive issue of all. I mean, you tell me you've been a female athlete and now you're a coach. To me, that's perhaps the most sensitive topic to bring up or talk about because of how they're responding to you. So how would you handle that in a constructive, positive way versus a negative way?
Yeah, well, this reminded me right before you asked that question. I actually did have a girl this year tell me about how a coach previously told her negative things about her body, in which caused her to have a eating disorder, and now she's recovered from it. So we had that conversation about it, and I believe how that conversation started was she was sitting out because she was injured, and we just started chit-chatting, and I think I talked to her about like this, what I just mentioned of, I'm not saying you're heavy. It's about how you're carrying yourself. And then she opened up about it. And I just really wanted to educate her on, it's not about what the scale says. It's about, one, how you feel about yourself and how you're just holding yourself in the air, because it doesn't matter what the scale says. It's just a matter about your skills and how the technique that you're using in order to do what you're doing.
Well, before we go any further, I want to congratulate you on that because there's the psychologist in you that came out with that young lady. And how did that turn out in terms of you working with her? How did she take that?
Good. I think she very appreciated it, and she seems to be in a lot better mindset. And I could tell just when talking to her that she seemed hurt in the past, but she is healed from that hurt, and that she's in a better place now.
I have lots of sayings I've used throughout my career. One of them is a good coach is a good communicator, but a great coach is a good listener. And I think if you take the time to listen, not just to their verbal words, but their body language and observations, you can really pick up a lot of things about them, can't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it's about how you then, as a coach, decide to communicate with them and help them work through whatever that issue might possibly be. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of the times it might not be the flyer themselves saying, like, having those doubts, but then it's the bases that'll chit chat and say, like, oh, well, she's heavy or this or that. So I really try to make sure that conversation's minimized and say, like, you guys can give constructive criticism to each other. I'm not telling you guys you cannot do that, but there's a difference between being mean and giving constructive criticism. And there's a way to give constructive criticism to each other. I've taught them that to give a constructive criticism is saying, like, you always give a positive and then you give the negative, but try to follow it up with on a good note at the end of it. So being like, that was a really good job. However, maybe next time try to do it this way.
That's very impressive. I'm impressed with what you're doing. That and I'm sure a lot of these young ladies appreciate that from you, because that Kate, what that's telling me about you is you really care about them as people.
Mm-hmm.
Forget being a cheerleader. You care about them as a human being. Now, let me shift here a little bit in a connection with this. Is the role parents play in all this? Okay, I know I get a smile out of you when I ask that one. Okay. Okay, so where do parents fit in all this? Because, with all the sports I've worked with and levels I've worked with, you got to deal with parents. And most parents, I co-wrote a book called Just Let Them Play, Guiding Parents, Coaches, and Athletes Through Youth Sports. And we talk about the role parents have in here. And one of the key things is I talk about, it used to be the parent, coach, athlete triangle. Now it's the parents, coach, athlete, official square, because they all fit. Everybody has a role in there.
Yeah.
So where do parents fit in when you're coaching these young girls? How do you deal with them? How do you handle them, especially the ones that want to become overly involved and start telling you what to do, which I'm sure you've had to deal with that before.
Yeah. How I've dealt with it is I have a very strict contract. And what I try to instill is I have a 24-hour rule.
But this is with high school cheerleaders.
This is with high school cheerleaders.
Yeah.
And my 24-hour rule is after any incident, practice or game, the athlete needs to wait 24 hours after that to come to me to talk about it. That way, everyone can calm down, think about everybody's emotions, can chill out, and then the athlete has to come to me about whatever it is, talk to me about it, see if we can come to a resolution about whatever the problem may be. If they don't like it, then the parent can come to me.
Okay. Let me interrupt you here for a second. I like that. What do you do? What do you do if there's a problem and the athlete won't come talk to you, and the parents want to tell you what to do?
I've had that. I tell the parent.
You probably had at least more than once, right?
Yep. I tell the parent it's within the 24-hour rule. Your athlete needs to come and talk to me about it. Or if it's a issue in which the parent is too upset, in which it's not really an athlete to come to me about, I say, well, you need to wait 24 hours. Like, the decision's been made. You need to wait 24 hours before I will discuss this matter with you.
Have you ever had to kick somebody off a team?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
I've kicked.
Can you share that with us?
I kicked 2 girls off of the team for bullying. I do not tolerate any of that type of behavior in any shape, way, or form. So.
And how did they take that? How did their parents take that?
The one parent understood completely, and the athlete understood it. They didn't necessarily. I think they were shocked that I found out about it. I told them at the beginning of the year that I find out everything and I hear everything, and I don't think they believed that. The other one, my daughter would never do that. I don't know what you're talking about. She would never do that, kind of a situation. And I said, well, this was my decision. And then both athletes admitted it to the administration after it. So.
Did the parent apologize?
No.
Of course not.
But I've learned that I don't need a parent. I've had parents yell at me and scream at me and upset with me, which that's fine. You can be upset. I understand it's your child. But I'm also a human being too. And I understand I can make mistakes.
Can you share what they yell or scream at you about?
So during the season, I make them do evaluations each week. If you don't know your stuff, you don't get to go out in front of on the football field and cheer. And I think that's very fair. Like, you need to know your cheers. You need to know the cheers that you've learned since day one. I'm not asking a lot out of you. I'm just asking you to know the words and know the motions of the cheers that you've learned since week 1. We're now into week 7. And I had a returner not know it. So she sat the game. I was told that I'm bullying and hazing her and making fun of her in front of all of her peers and teachers.
Who said that?
The parent. And I was like, and then they said that she wasn't going to come to the game. And I said, well, she misses the game, then she misses the next game. Because if you miss one game because you want to take her to your son's soccer game, instead of having her come be with her team, even though she's sitting, she will not participate the next game. She'll have to sit. It's a team sport. You still have to show up. And they didn't like that. So they had very choice words for me about that.
So you've got pretty clear guidelines at the beginning of the season about all these things.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are going to challenge you as you go through the year. So I understand that. So I admire you for having a strong foundation of how you coach. And I'm sure a lot of this comes from your upbringing, you know, growing up in cheer and seeing the different things that went on. Okay,
Yeah.
before we wrap things up, Kate, I want to ask you 3 definitions. And,
Okay.
and we're not in English class, so you can say it any way you want. You can even use the word in the definition. I've got you smiling, so you're on, what is this going to be? Okay. First, tell me your definition of winning. What does winning mean?
Achieving a goal in which you've set. And yeah, I think it's achieving the goal in which you've set. And that could be the soccer game or getting the job that you want or any capacity of such.
Awesome. Love that. Okay. I agree with you 100% on that. What is your definition of losing?
The opposite of winning, not achieving the goal in which you set. But I think losing is not fulfilling your potential in the way of not trying. Like, not, I need to find the words for this. Not, like you can, well, maybe not. Yeah. The opposite of winning is not achieving your goal.
Not achieving your goal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one, self-confidence. How would you define that?
How you feel about yourself.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree totally. To me, winning is, did you accomplish the goals you set for yourself? It has nothing to do with what place you came in. Did you accomplish your goals? Losing is, you didn't accomplish your goal. Why? It's not about what place. To me, winning and losing aren't about what place you finish. It's about how you did.
Yeah.
And that's the philosophy I've used my whole career with athletes at all levels. And I find if I have I'm in Kansas City. I work with several Chiefs players. I have one of the Chiefs stars worked with me for a while. His jersey is in my office, and on his jersey has the letters FOE, stands for focus on effort. Because we talk about effort instead of results. And if the effort's there, he usually has the result. And that's how I look at that. So listen, this has been great interviewing you, Kate. Let me ask you, if people would like to get a hold of you, how could they reach you?
They can reach me on social media. It's Kate Sawina. It's just my name.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight. This has been great. You've shared some really interesting information that I know a lot of people who listen to these will pick up on, and you might hear from some people, because I like your perspective. I like your attitude, and I can see why you were successful as a 3-year-old and why you're successful now.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining me. And so as we close, if you've enjoyed our conversation, go to my website, winnersunlimited.com, click on the podcast tab, and you can listen to episodes of the show, and get a hold of me at drj@winnersunlimited.com and find out more information about me. So thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate it, and stay safe.